Good afternoon. This is Laura Lewis. I'm the director of the WSU Food Systems Program, and this is First Friday Food Systems Focus. Today is May 3rd, and our guest speaker today is Chris Iberle. He's the Farm to School and Value Chain Specialist with the Regional Markets Program at the WSDA. A little bit about First Friday Food System Focus before I turn it over to Chris. I'm going to turn off my video just to preserve our quality of our digital streaming here. So the WSU Food Systems team is a collection of WSU researchers, academics, extension, faculty, and staff, as well as critical external partners such as the Washington State Department of Agriculture, PCC Farmland Trust, Tilth Alliance, Washington counties, conservation districts, and other industry partners. This team collaborates to provide specialized resources for farmers and food systems contributors throughout Washington State, working to support viable farm businesses, optimize sustainable natural resource stewardship, and to provide scaled processing and distribution, always in the pursuit of access to healthy food for all. Like I said, today's presenter is Chris Iberle. He is our Farm to School and Value Chain Specialist, and today he's going to be introducing Farm to School programs. I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for having me. My name is Chris Iberle. As Laura said, I'm the Farm to School and Value Chain Specialist at the Washington State Department of Agriculture. Primarily focused on education and outreach for Farm to School all across the state. Farm to School includes a few different things, and I'll cover that in an intro to what Farm to School is and what it looks like. But our unique role within Farm to School is usually on procurement and getting more locally grown foods into school meals. So for those of you that don't know what Farm to School actually looks like or why we're here, some of the benefits of Farm to School starts with students. And students are eating more fruits and vegetables when local and fresh foods are on the tray. Farm to School improves learning and starts students off to make better health and future food choices in the future. The Farm to School programming across the state also helps increase meal participation. Nationally, we see a 3 to 16% increase in student participation in school meals when Farm to School is happening. It also gives great opportunities for more learning, supports the local economy, and supports our local farmers, and gets more high quality, tasty food into the lunchroom. Speaking of farmers, definitely a key part of Farm to School, obviously, and farmers are in it for student health, and we do a Farm to School survey every 2 years through WSDA Farm to School. We ask school districts what they think the benefits are of Farm to School, and farmers actually say that contributing to student health and being a part of the school lunch program is one of the most important reasons for them. And also teaching kids about agriculture and what it means to be a farmer. And it can be a really meaningful market, especially for small and medium-sized farms who can see an increase in sales by connecting with their local school district. And for the community as a whole, there's benefits for Farm to School. Nationally, we see that for every dollar spent, there's a boost to the local economy of anywhere from 60 cents to over $2. Because of that, job creation, increased food security, and overall, we hope that Farm to School is having a lot of fun with what's happening in the school cafeteria, in school gardens, and throughout the community. So to sum up what the core elements of Farm to School are, this is from the National Farm to School Network, which WSDA Farm to School is the core partner for that national network. And they break it down into a three-legged stool. So these are the components of Farm to School. Education, often in the classroom or in the cafeteria. School gardens, happening on the school grounds, and procurement, so getting more locally grown foods into school meals. And so for comprehensive Farm to School, having all three of those things makes a huge difference for students in schools where those are happening. And I wanted to break down kind of those three areas just to give an overview of what's happening in Washington State. in those areas of farm to school. So we worked with the Washington State Farm to School Network and some partners there to actually update a list of school gardens and a map for those gardens across the state, and we're counting at least 288 school gardens across Washington. This one from Walla Walla is one way a school garden could look. And Farm to EC is another growing part of Farm to School too. It's not just K-12. We're seeing a lot of growth in early care and education, which is like preschool and child care, doing more farm to school, and the National Farm to School Network did a survey and found that in Washington there's 72 child care and preschool sites that are doing farm to school. Here's some kids out in Okanogan County in an apple bin, but the Farm to ECE and child care also has those three components, so education, school gardens at preschool centers, and local foods in the snack or lunch and meal programs that child care centers provide. And then last but not least, the procurement part of the equation is something that WSDA Farm to School works most heavily on, and I'll overview kind of how we do that work here in a minute. But we've been counting and working with school districts and nutrition staff all across the state for at least 10 to 12 years, and are working with a lot of school districts that buy direct from Washington farmers. And so USDA Farm to School census here lets us know that about $17 million were spent on local food by Washington schools in 2013, the last time they did the US Census. It's not the only way that procurement happens with farm to school. Some school districts are buying Washington grown products through their distributors, but we also work a lot on the farm direct piece, which helps connect more small and direct marketing farms to the school cafeteria. Harvest of the Month is one great way that looks. At least 47 schools are participating in Harvest of the Month. That's also a key piece connecting it to the classroom. So whether it's culinary classes or agriculture or nutrition classes, that third education piece, whether it's Harvest of the Month or any other curriculum development and agriculture, career and technical education, these can all be key parts of the educational component of farm to school. And Harvest of the Month can be both featured products in the cafeteria from your local farmer, and then also connected directly to the classroom and the curriculum across a variety of subjects. And it's a great way to integrate farm to school throughout the whole school. I just wanted to share that WSU is a part of farm to school, and especially the educational piece, in a really big way in extension offices all across the state. Here's one example from Clark County, how they've done Harvest of the Month, and some of the impact, is just an example of what farm to school looks like and the type of programming that happens, especially with WSU extension chapters being involved, reaching a lot of kids, 4,500 students, introducing local fresh food items, purchased some of them from local farms or through their distributor, and a great positive fun environment to try out new local fruits and vegetables through that educational component and outreach. So those are kind of the three areas of farm to school, and I'm going to dive here the next few minutes a little deeper into that procurement piece, because as I mentioned, WSDA Farm to School, we work most heavily in that area, although we try to support education and school gardens and the tons of great work that's happening on that in Washington State as well. So just to throw some numbers at you, working with school food service, about half of schools that responded to the USDA Farm to School census said they participate in farm to school activities of a variety of types. Again, about half of school districts that we had respond to our survey said they buy directly from farms, so that's where that 47% comes from, which equates to about 91 districts in the state, which is around a third or a little less than a third. But a lot of schools are still buying their products through distributors. So we do try to work with distributors, whether that's for fresh produce or broadline distributors, to increase the ability of school districts to buy Washington-grown products through those vendors as well. Part of that is just because here's another way to look at the percentage of ways that school districts buy their food. Again, most of them are working with their main distributor and trying to get more locally grown foods that way, but there are a lot of districts that buy directly from farms as well. Farm to School is an exciting, fun, and rewarding place to work, and also has some unique constraints and challenges that we run up against, and work a lot with school districts and farmers to navigate all of the above. And they're both on different sides of the equation, but they can create partnerships and work a lot together to troubleshoot some of these considerations. So there's a meal pattern and requirements that school districts have to follow that's set by the USDA, which also includes procurement rules and also helps set the budget and how much schools actually have to spend on school meals, which is just over $3. I think it's about $3.28 per meal is the standard reimbursement rate from the USDA this year, for example. So staff capacity for ordering, having the equipment and capacity to do more scratch cooking and preparation if what they're coming from them isn't chopped, washed, sliced, and diced in the way that they're expecting. Seasonality, obviously, school districts being in season or being in session at a time that's not the height of the growing season in most parts of Washington. Food safety and gap considerations. Some of the other reasons school may or may not be buying certain products. So how do we help schools troubleshoot and expand and grow their programs? How do we help farms get connected to those programs? I'm piggybacking here a little bit off of the overview that Laura Raymond gave about the WSDA Regional Markets Program on this call a couple of months ago. But the farm to school work that we do is a part of the Regional Markets Program, so it does contribute to supporting the economic viability of small and direct marketing farms, which is part of the reason that we work a lot on that farm direct piece, so that schools and smaller farms who might not sell through distributors can get that economic benefit from local procurement. And then obviously farm to school is a big piece of increasing the availability of Washington grown products in cafeterias and kitchens all across the state. So some of the programming, sorry this is a bit cut off here, but the various activities and ways that we do our work at WSDA Farm to School includes Taste Washington Day, which is a chance for schools to serve local products all together on a single day, the first October of the month, or the first Wednesday in October every year, which we partner with the Washington School Nutrition Association and OSPI Child Nutrition to coordinate that promotion, which is between anywhere from 50 to 75 school districts every year. The next date is going to be October 2nd, so it's a great celebration of the harvest and celebration of farm to school. We provide trainings and workshops for school districts and nutrition staff, and also for farmers and food producers on farm to school and how it works and how they can get connected. Technical assistance, so school districts and farmers can call me up, call an email, whether it's help getting into the school market or understanding how it works, or getting connected to potential buyers or potential farmers and suppliers near them. We do some resources and publications and fact sheets. So we have a school's guide to purchasing Washington grown foods. You can see there, along with a variety of other printed materials, seasonality charts, some harvest posters that are really great featured items and products that are promotional posters that schools can print up. We do some research and surveying. As I mentioned, every 2 years we do a farm to school survey of school nutrition and staff at districts around the state, and then also include a lot of farm to school questions on the small farmer survey that WSDA Regional Markets does. And then some special projects. So we're trying to be on the cutting edge of moving forward and supporting farm to school in new and creative and interesting ways. One way we've done that is through regional supply chain development, trying to connect food hubs and farmer co-ops to use infrastructure, develop new infrastructure to access institutions more effectively. So food hubs are a newer model and also a great way for farmers to work together and sell to institutions and schools, especially in a more streamlined way. It's a little more efficient maybe for 50 farmers to be selling to a school district through one delivery or one invoice or one order. And that's something that food hubs try to do and aggregate and provide that service to both buyers and to farmers. So our work has been in a few different regions to support those models and develop them a little bit more in a few counties in different parts of the state. Before that, we actually did a study on value chain strategies for source identified and minimally processed produce for the school market. So another challenge I mentioned earlier was the lack of local processed products that schools expect or sometimes need a high percentage of the ingredients that they get into their school meals to be prepped in some way and food service ready. So chopped, washed, sliced, diced, bagged, frozen, also helps overcome some of the seasonality challenges that we might have for things like berries and other products like that. So we're still working on this and tried to put out a report to look at how those food hubs and co-ops especially are using processing or developing new processing infrastructure to make it easier to sell to schools throughout the state. And then Taste Washington Day, of course, is a few examples of how Taste Washington Day looks around the state, something that is a great celebration and a great opportunity for schools to start out who maybe haven't done farm to school in the past and want to give it a shot on just one day. And also farm to school districts that have been doing it for years love to do really special farm to table menus that day. Or for the whole week in some cases, and it's just a great celebration and kind of coming together of farm to school with kids and students and parents, teachers, and school nutrition and cafeterias all across the state. And again, the next date will be October 2nd, so we're looking forward to in the next school year having October 2nd, 2019 as our upcoming Taste Washington Day. And then I'm about to wrap up here. The last highlight that I'll share in farm to school in the state is great effort from dozens of organizations, including WSU Food Systems team folks and organizations, agencies, school districts, farmers, all across the state came together to launch the Washington State Farm to School Network last year. So thanks to a USDA Farm to School grant, I worked as WSDA Farm to School to kind of be a facilitator of this process, but we're over 220 members from all across the different parts of Farm to School that are coming together to network, find out who's doing what where in the state with Farm to School. The network is broken up into regional hubs, so we actually have member and contact information if you're curious of looking up to see who's doing farm to school near you or is interested in it. Now you can find some of that information a little easier online through the regional hub directory. We have statewide communities of practice. So for people who are working on farm to school or farm to ECE and childcare or local food and school meals or education on nutrition and agriculture in the classroom, those 4 topics we have statewide occasional conference calls and an email list for practitioners and members who are working on those topics to connect with each other and learn and find best practices, new ideas, and develop and grow and support the work that they're doing. And then we also set some goals and priorities for the network and some of those topic areas on farm to school for the state, and have been working a lot on impacts and evaluation as well, which is where some of the earlier numbers that we looked at came from. And also storytelling and highlights, and I think that's the other goal of the network was to also celebrate the great work in farm to school that's already happening in the state, share those stories, and try to inspire and proliferate and grow the number of stories that we have about farm to school successes and highlights all across the state. So definitely look up the Washington State Farm to School Network. It's an open membership process, so you just fill out a member form and you get plugged into any or all of those parts of the network at waffarmtoschoolnetwork.org, and you can log on there and read more about it. Another thing that we're doing this year through the Washington State Farm to School Network is organizing regional gatherings, so sign up for one near you. We'll start kicking these off in a couple of weeks. It's going to be really exciting, doing a focused procurement session with farmers and with school nutrition staff, along with mixers and networking opportunities for folks working on school gardens and in their classrooms in the multi-county region that we broke down the state into these different regions. So we'll be there in Central Washington on May 16th, the King Pierce area on May 21st, Northeast Washington May 22nd, Southeast Washington May 23rd, Southwest Washington May 28th, and just announced this week, June 10th, Mount Vernon. That's going to be an even bigger and longer event too for with a school garden focus. That's going to start actually at 8:30 there in Mount Vernon. Those other events will be in the afternoon, the ones in May, from about 2:30 to 5:30. You can actually sign up for different sections depending on your interest, whether local procurement something you want to work on, or if you're a school gardener, more connecting with other gardeners near you. So those regional gatherings are coming up. Would love to see as many of you there that are interested to sign up and join us there. And yeah, thanks a lot. I think that's all presentation-wise, but I'd love to see what questions there might be about farm to school in general, or about the work that WSDA Farm to School is doing, or about the network.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. What a fabulous overview and a lot of information to unpack. So I wanted to see if any of the attendees have any questions, and if not, I have some for you. So anyone have a question for Chris? Okay, Chris, I'm going to jump in and just ask you a little bit about the network itself. It's really an incredible group, and it's very diverse in terms of members and participation. And I just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit more about how those stakeholders originally came together to form the group.
Yeah, good question. Definitely is building off of momentum for farm to school in the state in Washington. That it's been building over many years, and lots of great champions and great work that's been happening. So before the network, there was a statewide coordinating call with about 40 or so people invited to join that, and just seemed like there was a lot more potential for more statewide coordination and a little more structure. So like I said, WSDA Farm to School, with the support of the USDA Farm to School grant, convened a formation committee of about 10 to 12, 10 organizations that tapping into some of those folks that had been involved in the statewide coordinating call, along with trying to reach out to as many school nutrition staff, farmers, school gardeners. We had a survey and a listening sessions that we did for a variety of sectors all across farm to school to gather input on what folks would want to see out of the network itself, and what they thought networking would do to support their work, how they want to participate. And we tried to capture across the diversity of types of farm to school work that happens, the different ways that people are involved in farm to school. Tried to reach out to as many different folks as we could, and capture that input on designing the network and what it should look like. And then we kind of brought some folks together in May of 2018 to share those results and kind of confirm what the network structure should look like.
I also wanted to hear you reflect a little bit on what you feel are some of the unique challenges that we still face in Washington when it comes to getting more schools at least participating in farm to school programs, as well as just looking at the increasing when you showed that diagram there of the distribution of procurement and how much is still coming through institution or distribution networks versus direct from farm, sort of increasing the opportunity for more farm produce. Although it's wonderful to see 95% of the produce it looks like it was Washington grown or what they're getting. But looking at that more direct school opportunity, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I can try to go back to that slide here too. You're mentioning, so 95% of districts that buy Washington grown foods get it from a distributor is what that number is. Just to clarify, because definitely not 95% of their products are Washington grown. So when they buy Washington grown foods, 95% of the time they're getting it through a distributor.
I see.
Yeah. So so some of the challenges, and like I said, that's the day in, day out that we're trying to support school districts that some of them have figured out a lot of things and are doing really great work on farm direct purchasing, and some are newer and just getting into it and figuring out how to make it work at their district. So that's one challenge, is actually that every district is different. Their own kitchens are different, their kitchen management, the type of vendors that they want to use are different. So we're often trying to navigate that kind of district by district. But I would say, some of the big challenges that come up, if I can go back to another slide, particularly with farm direct procurement, is definitely budget and costs. In some cases, buying directly from smaller farms because of their practices and cost of production. Maybe it's organic. Maybe it's just size and scale differences between, buying produce essentially from the global market, which is what distributors provide. Those costs can be different, and budgets are tight at school districts and at school kitchens and cafeterias in particular. So they don't have a lot of money for purchasing. Figuring out how to navigate those procurement rules and how to make it easy. If they're used to buying through a distributor that brings them everything, 100% of what they need, buying from a farm, and figuring out who to contact, what kind of products they have, when they're going to have those, what they have that week. All that takes time, and I often say farmers and school nutrition staff are probably some of the two most busy types of people you'll find out there, and school nutrition folks are doing everything from menu planning to cooking up the food itself to serving the kids to everything they need to do to put potentially 30,000 meals on the table at the district across the state or across their district on a given day. So they've got a lot on their plate, and the capacity to go outside and find new farms and new ways to do that purchasing just takes some time. So trying to make that easy, I think, is a big piece. And then the scratch cooking and preparation definitely depends on what their kitchen looks like and whether they are more of a heat and eat model, or if they have some of the equipment and some of the staff time and skills to chop carrots with tops that come in bunches, as opposed to having carrot sticks. They open up a bag and it's ready to go. So that's definitely a big piece that we're working on as well.
On the flip side of that, what about these sort of large global distributors? Do you see them becoming or changing their sort of business model to be more flexible and with farm to school programs as well?
That's a good question. Just to go back to the distributor side, I mean, yeah. So I'd say I personally have had contact with most of the produce distributors and some of the broadliners, and the difference between those two is just that FSA and Cisco delivers everything in addition to produce that a school might need for their food service, but most of them do have a produce distributor in particular that they work with on produce and fruits and vegetables. So some of them do a fairly good job of promoting and marketing and highlighting what comes from Washington farms. Sometimes it's not obvious to the school districts where even if it's a Washington potato and that's what's delivered that day, they don't necessarily know that it came from a Washington farm. So just that information sharing piece is something that is hard for the distributors to do. It's something that they are trying to work on more. But just the day-to-day information sharing and access to that for the schools is difficult. And that, there's only so many suppliers that they can work with or that meet the requirements. And so they have a limited, comparing the 5,000 plus direct marketing farms that we have in Washington to, a supplier list from Washington growers that the distributors might be working with, that's anywhere from 60 to 100. So that's a big difference, and limits the amount of Washington grown product that they're actually carrying. And that's something we're trying to help them increase too. I think you went off and on mute. I don't know. You're back. Okay.
You're back. There was a little sound difficulty there, but it sounds like you're back. Thank you so much for that response. The last thing I wanted to ask, unless anyone else has questions, is when you look at the array of opportunity for Washington-grown foods to come into schools, whether it's through a large produce distributor or a large distributor company, where do you see gaps? Do you see gaps, for instance, in fruit, in vegetables, in grain, in dairy, in protein, in terms of where there's more opportunity for growth?
I think a starting point for farmer school is often fruits and vegetables, and that actually means grains and dairy and proteins in particular. Sometimes are the second stop, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that probably there is a lot of growth potential and more opportunities, obviously with meat. And if you're talking about direct and pastured and grass-fed and some of the costs that go into producing those kind of products, that might, again, be a sticky, tricky point for school districts to meet that price point. And obviously the lack of USDA processing or challenges with that could be another factor. But there are some schools actually in Skagit area that are starting to use more the Skagit grown wheat, for example. Definitely in Eastern Washington, there's been work with a variety of suppliers and growers for some of those grain products. So there's a lot of creativity that can happen around that. I think it's kind of a difference between whether you're looking at trying to have a large program with lots of students that you're having to feed, and if you can get the buy of the right price for the flour or the grain product that you're looking for, or if you have the flexibility to, feature ancient grain or some really cool grain product on the trays. Two different approaches. So yeah, I think trying to think of if there's gaps in particular. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to plan ahead with farmers, for school districts and farmers to work together to kind of know maybe what farmers are growing and where that might be going locally and regionally. And given we're trying to, through the regional gatherings and through other work, just connecting producers, with school buyers to do more of that planning and to, have farmers hopefully get a little more information about, what the schools want, what they need, and what they would like to buy locally. And for farmers then to be able to plan that in, to know, all right, this half an acre could go to the school district, and we have an agreement that we'll harvest that and send it their way, throughout the school year. So I think that kind of coordination and back and forth is really important, and there's definitely more work to do to keep those communication lines open and do some more of that pre-planning, forward contracting type of work too.
Well, I just want to, if anyone else who's participating has a question before we sign off. And in the meantime, I also really just want to thank you, Chris, for this wonderful overview, and also just the incredible work that WSDA is doing around this subject. It's really exciting to see where it's going, where it's come from. Really incredible institutional and grassroots support, and it's exciting to also see where it's headed. So I really appreciate the work that you do and your commitment to farm to school. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to let us sign off, and this will go live in a day or two on YouTube as well. So thanks for participating, and look for future First Friday Food System events. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.